Krishna. Maybe somebody could help with the harmonium. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gnanjana Salakaya Chakshuru Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Utapadakamalam Sri Gurum Vaishnavascha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Satvaitam Savadutam Tvarijana Saitam Sri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sagana Lalita Sri Vishakambitam Scha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kantaradhat Kantanamostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavanishwari Vrisabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarupyascha Kripa Sundupya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine. So thank you all for returning for the next session on the importance of hearing. We have discussed this morning different reasons why we should hear as much as possible. I'm not going to list them all again, but these are 13 reasons, and I think it's already a nice start to have 13 reasons to get the impetus for hearing. But just before we go to the next topic, which is the when, I would like to add a 14th reason, and later on we will also have a 15th reason why we should hear. But let's first hear from Srila Prabhupada. So what is Prabhupada saying? What is the reason for hearing? Anyone? This is what I do with Kiran in the morning after we hear, and I'm always asking him, so, what did you understand from this section? Sorry, if you don't hear then? Yeah, you lose the taste for worshipping the deity, and you think Prabhupada gave us a burden by giving us this deity. So hearing will keep our deity worship also strong and full of taste. And what did he say at the very end of the lecture? Yes, very important one. If we do not hear sufficiently, we will stay in the Kanishta Adhikari platform, which is Prakrita Bhakta. It's a Bhakta that is tinged with material influences. So if we want to go to the Madhyam level, then we also have to hear sufficiently. So that's the 14th reason, to elevate ourselves to the Madhyam Adhikari platform. But let's first go to the next question. Why we did thoroughly this morning. So I hope this evening we will be able to cover the when and the how, and hopefully also a little bit of the what. So when? What do you think? When should we hear? 24 hours. Wow, that's quite ambitious. You're not sleeping? In the morning? Okay. Anything else? In the afternoon? And in the evening? Sometimes when you wake up, you cannot sleep. Then you can also take Bhagavatam. So what is the word that's many times used in scripture? Satatam is one. Yeah, related to kirtan. Satatam kirtayanto mam. Always. Satatam means always, eternally. Sat means eternal. So satatam means you eternally. I hope Krishna will not test me too much. Especially after 6 o'clock, my wife always says, after 6 I should not ask you any difficult questions, and after 7 I should not ask you any questions. Because the only thing that I'm saying then is, okay. So satatam is one, to always hear and chant about Krishna. Another word that's used, nityam. Nasta prayashu abhadreshu, nityam bhagavata sevaya. So nityam, sometimes Prabhupada translates it as always, like in the verse, ananya cheta satatam yomam smariti nityasa. Tashyaham sulabha partha, nitya yuktasya yogina. Krishna uses the word nityam 3 times in this verse. Ananya cheta satatam, yomam smariti nityasa, tashyaham sulabha partha, nitya yuktasya yogina. Always, always, always. But nityam also means regularly. So always, eternally, regularly. But before getting a little bit more into this, there's a beautiful verse from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, where Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is saying, Siddhanta baliyat chite nakara alash, iya hoite Krishna lage sudrida manash. There's a very important instruction that Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is giving us, and that is we should not be alash. And alash means lazy. Do not be lazy when it's related to hearing and chanting and discussing so-called controversial topics that are there in the scriptures. Don't be lazy. Why should we not be lazy? Because iya hoite Krishna lage sudrida manash. Such a beautiful verse is this. Lage means you become fixed. What is becoming fixed? Manash. The mana becomes fixed on what? On Krishna. So do not be lazy, because if you're lazy, your mind can never be fixed on Krishna. But this is a very important instruction. Don't be lazy. And as we ended the session this morning with the story of Gadadhar Pandit and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who discussed Srimad Bhagavatam 3 to 4 hours every day in the Tota Gopinath temple. Every day. So one beautiful verse, one of my favorites, it's in the 1st canto, 3rd chapter. What is the title of the 3rd chapter of the 1st canto? Anyone? What is discussed in the 3rd chapter? Huh? Bhagavatam. Incarnations. Wonderful. Yes, it's the list of 22 incarnations. We quoted this verse this morning, but we quoted it related to dukkha gramat vimuchyate. If you see that here. Dukkha gramat vimuchyate means you will get rid of all the causes of misery. When will you get rid of all the causes of misery? Well, janma guyam bhagavato, ya etat prayato naraha. If you hear and chant about Krishna's confidential pastimes and appearances, janma guyam, means the confidential appearance of the Lord. If you chant and hear about it, when? Sayam and pratar. Pratar means morning, and sayam is what we do now. It's evening. Grinan, and grinan means to hear. Bhaktya, with some devotion. Then dukkha gramat vimuchyate. So if you feel you're suffering, that you are mentally not in balance, and you're really struggling with the mind and the body and the sufferings of this world, then please take this instruction to heart. Maybe, Jesse, could you again read some of the translations? This is the translation.
Whoever carefully recites the mysterious appearances of the Lord with devotion in the morning and in the evening gets relief from all miseries of life.
It's nice, no? But you have to do it morning and evening. There is another verse from the 9th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Yaitat samsmaret prataha sayam. You see it? Sayam pratar, and here it says prata sayam. Chasa susamihita kavye bhavati mantro gyo gatim cheva tatatmanaha. It's also in the morning and in the evening, but here you get a few different benedictions. Can you read the translation?
If one hears and chants or remembers this narration in the morning and evening with great attention, he certainly becomes learned, experienced in understanding the Vedic hymns, and expert in self-realization.
So you're not only getting rid of the material sufferings, but you become learned, expert in the Vedic hymns, and also expert in self-realization. You develop your self-realization very nicely. So here Nityam or Satatam means morning and evening. And how did Srila Prabhupada arrange for the temple programs? You see, Prabhupada is not speculating. Prabhupada's programs are based on scripture. And therefore he arranged for a strong morning program and a strong evening program. And then in the middle of the day, the rest of the day, you're engaged in all kinds of devotional services. A few lectures ago, after giving the lecture, one Indian guest lady approached me, and she was very confused. She said, I have a full-time job. I said, I also have a full-time job. And she was already relieved. Oh, you also have a full-time job. And she said, how do you do that? That during my job, during the day, I want to think of Krishna, I want to hear about Krishna, but I'm in the middle of meetings and I have so many things to do. Right, Gonitai? So how are we doing this? And then I quoted this top verse, Janma Guyam Bhagavato. I said, if you would wake up early and you have strong hearing in the morning, and after your job you have strong hearing in the evening, then the rest of the day will be very fixed up, even if you have to deal with the material energy. And she was very happy I gave her this verse. And she said, oh, now I know I can balance my life by strong hearing in the morning and in the evening. Children. I said you have to wake up before your children wake up. That's how I do it. And then the last one related to when. Many of you might know this verse. Maybe we can chant it together. We can try. Shat Krishna Nama Charitadi Sitapya Vidya Pito Patapta Rasanasya Narochikanu Kintvadaratta Nudinam Kalu Saiva Justa Satvi Kramat Bhavati Tat Kadamula Hantri. Such a powerful verse also. Here it says Shat Krishna Nama Charitadi. Krishna's name, his charita, like the Chaitanya Charita Amrita. Charita means his pastimes, his qualities, his form. So all this, for a person who is in avidya, in ignorance, this sita is sugar. If you have something that is sweet, but you are suffering from the disease of jaundice, then whatever is sweet is tasting as bitter. So if you are sick with avidya, then those things, nama, charita, etc., they also taste very bitter. But kintva adarat anudinam. Adarat means very carefully or respectfully. And here I underlined anudinam, daily, every day. Anudinam. Dine is used frequently in the Vedic scriptures. Dine. In many prayers you hear that dine. So it means day after day after day after day. Very regular. So when you do that, then the root cause of our avidya, of our ignorance, will be destroyed and taste will gradually develop. Svatvi kramat bhavatitat gadamula hantri. Kramat means a step, like trivi krama or uru krama. Many times you hear that the process of Krishna consciousness is krama. It's step by step. It's a gradual process. So what will happen gradually if you hear and chant daily is that the root cause of our distaste for Krishna consciousness will be wiped away and the natural taste will develop automatically. So the message here is please try to hear regularly, morning and evening, even if it's a few verses of the Gita in the morning and a few verses in the afternoon or evening, then automatically your consciousness will be fixed up. Any questions on this? Any realizations on when? Or is it clear? We will strive for 24 hours, but we will start with morning and evening. How many of you are doing that, morning and evening, reading or hearing? Yes, most of the time? Or morning, yes, evening, more difficult, right? Bhagavati? Yeah. And in between, yes. At a certain stage in your life, you can do that. Wonderful. You made a song about the incarnations. That's nice. One day you can show it to us. It's nice. Okay, then how to? And I want to split this up in more practical how to and also attitudes. And we start with the practical. So how to? By attending live lectures. And I put live here because there is quite a difference between online lectures and live lectures. My realization, personal realization, is when I go to the class, it doesn't matter who is giving class. Of course, some classes are nicer than other classes. But always at the end of the class, when I walk out of the temple room, I feel so purified. And I'm, happy by the sacrifice of hearing. Because if you really hear the speaker, then there are always realizations of the speaker that are interesting, that I didn't realize or didn't think of. And then you make notes, and then you feel purified. And sometimes I feel more enlivened by hearing a live class from a person who doesn't give a wonderful class than that I listen online classes from a wonderful speaker. And why is that? Because you tend to do a lot of other things during the listening when you're at home. It's like listening in between while doing some practical stuff. Is that your realization also? It doesn't matter, I can listen to Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, to Radhika Raman Prabhu, to so many wonderful speakers. But still, the mind is not as absorbed as when you sit down in the temple room and you just dedicate everything in the hearing process. Yeah, that can be a very nice meditation, but then you are like really focused on one thing. But when you're at home, many times you do things. Sometimes I do ironing, I have to admit, because I have a wife who is quite absorbed in devotional service in Radhadesh, so sometimes I'm ironing. And while ironing, you can also nicely listen to a class. So it's not that it's forbidden, but there is a difference between live lectures, where there is interaction, and listening online. Now, of course, the second one is listening lectures online. Sometimes, when I'm not able to come to the temple, many times because of my job, while preparing meetings for my job, I'm listening the lectures online. And that is like Sometimes you pick up something, sometimes your concentration is not really there, but it's better than nothing. So, yeah. Then the third one is personal reading and study. This one is very important, and we will talk about it a little bit later in a few slides. How many of you are regularly reading Srila Prabhupada's books? How many of you are just not getting into it? It's too difficult. Yeah, it's just not getting into the habit of reading Prabhupada's books. So yeah, you have to create time to study Srila Prabhupada's books. We will get to that later. And then, reading in group. Nikunya Vasini Mataji ki jai. Because he initiated that for 7 weeks in a row when there was no Bhakti Vaibhav. Then Mother Nikunya Vasini, she facilitated the reading together. And that's also a wonderful experience to discuss and to read and to churn. So these are the 4 ways of hearing: attending live lectures, listening lectures online, personal reading and study, and then reading in group. Srila Prabhupada, he mentioned that when we hear, or when we read, we have to do it scrutinizingly. Maybe Jesse, you could read what Prabhupada says here.
Each and every shloka should be very, very scrutinizingly understood. That should be the first business in the temples of all these books. We have got so many books. Simply, if we make arrangement for selling, not for understanding, then it will be simply materialistic. Both things must go on.
So what is the eye catcher here? Huh? Scrutinizingly, yes. And what else? That should be the first business in the temple. To scrutinizingly study these books. And we will hear a little bit more about that later. This is the table in the kitchen. My table in the kitchen. So usually it looks like this. Notes and books. And so I made a picture of it. Because it's so inspiring. And then this book and that book. And then you check your notes. Can you read this, Jesse?
The process of speaking in spiritual circles is to say something upheld by the scriptures. One should at once quote from scriptural authority to back up what he is saying. At the same time, such talk should be very pleasurable to the ear. By such discussions, one may derive the highest benefit and elevate human society. There is a limitless stock of Vedic literature, and one should study this. This is called penance of speech.
17th chapter is talking about the austerities of speech. And the word that is used there is svajaya abhyasanam. Anyone remembers what is abhyas? Yes, very good. Who said this? Yes, very good. We discussed that in a previous lectures, abhyasa yoga yuktena. So svajaya abhyasanam is a practice. What is the practice? The practice of self-study. Radhikaraman Prabhu, he mentioned in his lectures a few wonderful things about svajaya abhyasanam. One thing he said about studying is that while studying you have to try to make notes. And it goes so far that he mentioned that while making notes, when you go through all the books of Srila Prabhupada, and when you have made notes about all the books of Srila Prabhupada, you have made your own commentary on the Bhagavatam, on the Gita, on the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and the Nectar of Devotion. You write your own bhashya, your own tika. And then all of us have our own commentary of the Bhagavatam mixed with our own realizations. This is a very wonderful way to scrutinizingly Srila Prabhupada his books. He also mentioned that we have to do that repeatedly. Why repeatedly? There are 2 important reasons why we should hear repeatedly. One is, according to Radhika Prabhu, is that when you read, what happens when you read? What was the first why when we discussed it this morning? It's the purification. So if you read certain slokas, you become purified. And then when you read those slokas again in the more purified consciousness, then you will get newer realizations. Does it make sense? I don't know how many times you read Bhagavad Gita, but even if you read it like 20, 30, 40 times, every time when you read it, you get newer insights. That's because when you read, you get purified, and then when you read it again, you read it in a different way, in a more deep and realized way. So that's one reason. Another reason why we should repeatedly hear is because in previous lives, and maybe also in this life, we did repeatedly other things, which are impressions in our minds. It's discussed Matirna Krishne Parato Svatova Mito Vipacheta Grihavratanam Adanta Gobiya Vishatam Tamishram Puna Punaschavita Chavananam. Puna Puna means again and again and again, Charvita Chavananam. We have again and again chewed the truth. And what is chewing the truth? Is trying to get juice out of something that has no more juice. Sense gratification is charvita, charvananam. So because we did for so many lifetimes puna punas charvita charvananam, our mind is full of materialistic impressions. And therefore we always say namo namaha, pay obeisances again and again, dine dine, every day, nityam, always, satatam, always, just to replace the puna puna charvita charvananam. That is why again and again and again we come in the temple room and we bow down and we chant the holy names of the Lord and we read scriptures just to purify this consciousness which was chewing the truth for so many lifetimes. So that is why we have to study deeply, repeatedly. And the other one is we have to study fully. Why should we study fully? Anyone? Incomplete knowledge is not good. Yes, that's already very nice answer. Anyone else? Little knowledge is dangerous. Yes. Anyone else? Yes, we forget all the time.
It's something about assimilating it.
Assimilating it, yeah, but that's also repeatedly. By doing it repeatedly, you assimilate. Fully is very important because if you just study a certain aspect or a certain portion, then you don't get the context. Like sometimes you are focusing on certain quotes from Srila Prabhupada, and you just focus on those quotes, and then you repeatedly quote these quotes of Srila Prabhupada, but there are many other quotes that actually balance the statements that Prabhupada made somewhere. So if you study all the books of Srila Prabhupada, then you get a more balanced understanding of the context of the scriptures. So that is very important also, is to get the full picture. So that's why we should study repeatedly and fully. Yeah? Then about attitude. Attitude is everything. With what attitude should we hear and read scripture? And that is also one of the reasons, the 15th reason why we should study, and we forgot that this morning, and it's the most important reason why we should study, why we should hear. That we mentioned. Nitya Siddha Krishna Premi Satya Kabunoi, we quoted that. But we are hearing to please Krishna. I told this story many times ago. It is a personal realization that I had when I visited Vrindavan in, I think, 2002. I was already working in the company I'm still working. And I did a retreat of 2 weeks. Maybe you remember, I told it one time. And I was chanting 64 rounds every day in Vrindavan. And my whole purpose was to develop taste for the chanting and to get really into the mood of chanting. And the experience was very, very tough. Day 1, day 2, day 3, the first week, the day 8, it was just not very tasty, the chanting. And I was struggling. And the closer the end of my retreat came, the more frustrated I became. There was just no happiness, no taste. Everything was difficult. When I looked around, I didn't like it. Even the Govardhan Parikrama was much more difficult than when I was younger. And it was a struggle. And then the very, very last day, just before the taxi would take me to the airport, I was chanting the last few rounds of my 64 rounds on my last day. And I was lamenting in my mind. Oh, it was such a tough time. And then I was looking into deities in the Krishna Balaram temple, and I saw all these people, and I was almost crying. I felt like I wasted my time here. Nothing happened in my heart. My heart didn't melt. So my last round number 64, and I felt so, okay. My suitcases were already ready in my room. I only had to jump into the taxi. So I paid my obeisances after finishing my rounds. And I stood up and I looked at the last time at Radhadesh, and there was a pujari, and this pujari, he waved at me. In the middle of the temple, it was packed, and I was thinking, no, he's not looking at me, he's not looking at me. So at one point, I did like this, and he said, yes, come. And then he just showed I had to go to the room next to it, the pujari room on the right side. So I went there, and he said, you Prabhuji, you sit. So I sat there, and I was completely confused. I was thinking I have to get my taxi. And then he said, I will get something for you. And then there was an offering of different preparations, and one of the preparations was hot milk. And he came with the cup of Radharani, with hot milk. He took a clay pot, he put it in the clay pot, and he said, this is for you. And I started to cry. I was thinking, oh my God, lamenting for 2 weeks. And Krishna saw all the time my struggle. Srimati Radharani was all the time there. And at the end, she gave the reward. I've seen you struggle. And I was in the taxi, and I was contemplating on what happened. I had already drank the hot milk. And then I realized I only wanted to taste something, which was quite selfish. I want to taste the sweetness of the holy name. But that is not why we are chanting. Krishna can give us taste whenever he wants. That's the mercy of Krishna. He can give it, he can also leave it out. Aslishyava padaratam pinashtumam adarshanam amatam karotuva. Krishna can crush you by his embrace. He can make you broken-hearted by not being present before you. But he remains our Lord unconditionally. So my realization was, if we just chant for Krishna's pleasure, that is actually the service. Sevan mukhe hi jivado. It's a seva to chant the holy name of the Lord. It's also a seva to hear. It is nityam bhagavata sevaya. So that is the real attitude when we practice Krishna consciousness, including hearing, is we hear because hearing pleases Krishna. And that is seva. I was talking with Bhaktin Dorothea, and I told her, do you know that sitting in the temple room and hearing a lecture is seva? And she was very surprised. Oh, it's actually devotional service to hear. It's not just running around or cooking or cleaning. So it's very important. To hear is to please Krishna. Now what should be the attitude? Another attitude? So we hear submissively. The reason why we study scripture is not so much to become knowledgeable. We don't want to become jnanis. We want to submissively hear. Even Sanatana Goswami, he said, Ke ami kene tapatroi. Sanatana Goswami is the Sambandha Acharya, and he mentioned to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Ke ami kene tapatroi. Who am I, my Lord? And why am I suffering? That was Sanatana Goswami. These were the two questions that he asked Lord Chaitanya. Who am I and why am I suffering? This is humility. To hear submissively. Tatvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya. From who do we hear? Usually we hear from the spiritual master. In what mindset are we hearing? Submissively. In a submissive consciousness. So to hear submissively means to serve the spiritual master. Sushrushro sradhadanasya vasudeva kataruchi shan mahat sevaya vipra punyatirtha nishevanat. So humility is very important. What else are attitudes in hearing? Enthusiasm? Yes, that we will come to that. Another one? Huh? Surrender, yes, you surrender to the spiritual master and then you hear. What other mindset sets should we have? Eagerness, it will come. Who said attentive? Wonderful. Attentive. Please repeat. Kechit etat shrutam parta. Sorry. Kaschit etat shrutam parta. Tvayeka grena chetasa. Kaschit agyana samhoha. Pranastate dhananjaya. Who is speaking this verse? Krishna. Krishna is saying kaschit, and kaschit means whether. I mean, whether is like, did you hear? Kaschit etach, did you hear this? What is this? Bhagavad Gita. Shrutam, did you hear? O son of Pritha. Did you hear what I was speaking? Tvaya, you. Eka, agrena. Eka means one-pointed. Agrena, attention. Chetasa, your mind. So the question that Krishna is asking Arjuna, did you hear this Bhagavad Gita with one-pointed attention? And again, kaschit, whether, ajnana sammoha, pranashtat. And pranashtat means disappeared or destroyed, or is it gone? So what is gone? Ajnana, is your ignorance gone now? Sammoha, is your complete delusion and your illusion also gone now? Oh, Dhananjaya. And Dhananjaya means? Huh? Arjun, but what does it mean? Conqueror of wealth. So why is Krishna using this word, conqueror of wealth? Why is that in relation to attentive hearing? Because it's the greatest wealth. Attentive hearing is the greatest wealth. The real wealth of life is listening attentively. Can you read the translation?
O son of Pratha, O conqueror of wealth, have you heard this with an attentive mind? And are your ignorance and illusions now dispelled?
Yeah, so attentive hearing is very, very important. This is a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. Again, 3rd chapter, Incarnations of Krishna. The very last verse. Can you read, please?
O learned Brahmanas, when Shukadev Goswami recited Srimad Bhagavatam there, in the presence of Emperor Parikshit, I heard him with rapt attention, and thus, by his mercy, I learned the Srimad Bhagavatam from that great and powerful sage. Now I shall try to make you hear the very same thing as I learned it from him, and as I have realized it.
Who is speaking? Sutta Goswami is speaking. Sutta Goswami was there when Sukadev Goswami was talking to Parikshit Maharaj, and he was part of the assembly of so many sages. So here he is saying that because I've heard him with rapt attention, now I can speak. So what did Srila Prabhupada say about this? About his own life? Yes, Bhaktisiddhanta was very pleased with Srila Prabhupada because Srila Prabhupada was attentively hearing. And Prabhupada said, because I heard so attentively from my spiritual master, therefore I can now do kirtanam very nicely. That is so important. And this is the purport of the same verse.
Simple hearing is not all. One must realize the text with proper attention. The word nivishta means that Sutta Goswami drank the juice of Bhagavatam through his ears. That is the real process of receiving Bhagavatam. One should hear with rapt attention from the real person, and then he can at once realize the presence of Lord Krishna in every page. The secret of knowing Bhagavatam is mentioned here. No one can give rapt attention who is not pure in mind. No one can be pure in mind who is not pure in action. No one can be pure in action who is not pure in eating, sleeping, fearing, and mating. But somehow or other, if someone hears with rapt attention from the right person, at the very beginning one can assuredly see Lord Sri Krishna in person in the pages of Bhagavatam.
Wonderful purport by Srila Prabhupada. And one important aspect here is that if you want to hear attentively, it's not so easy. How many of you during the last 3/4 of an hour have slipped your attention sometimes? Yes, sometimes the attention goes, right? And why is that? Because our mind is not yet fully pure. And why is our mind not yet fully pure? Because our actions are not yet fully pure. And Prabhupada says, if you want to be pure in action, you have to be pure in your eating, in your sleeping, in your mating, and in your defending actions. So this is a whole package, just like when we say chant and be happy.
But then it says, but somehow or other, if someone hears with rapt attention.
Yes.
So it sort of almost nullifies the other thing. That's it.
Yes. This Prabhupada is always very encouraging. Somehow or other, if you are able to hear with rapt attention, Krishna immediately manifests in the pages of every page in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Also from the right person. Yes. That's a little bit your misfortune this evening, but for the rest. Yes. Well, there's, for example, if you talk about sexual activities, how can that be pure? That's a doubt that could be in your mind. But Krishna says, Dharma avirudo bhuteshu kamoshmi bharatarshaba. 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, that sex life that is not contrary to the religious principles, that pleasure that you derive from it, that's me. So in other words, if you have sexual intercourse with your legal partner with the purpose of inviting souls to take birth in your family, then that is... It's the fearing, actually, it's ahara nidra bhaya maichunam chya. So bhaya can also mean defending. So the way you defend yourself, your body, for example, by having a house, is also you are defending yourself from the weather conditions or whatever. But if you do that in a pure way, then you can be pure in your mind, and then you can also hear attentively. So, so in that way, it's a little complicated to understand how you can be pure in fearing. But one way of understanding it is if you fear the illusion, you can fear Maya, you can fear the illusory energy. And Prabhupada said we should be very afraid of the material energy and take shelter of Krishna. So in that way. Unless you fear the material energy. If you are very careful in dealing with the material energy, then that's the right way of fearing. I don't want to fall back into the attractions of this material energy, that's the right way of hearing. So the next is, we heard already a little bit about eagerness, and we will get to that now. Jesse, could you read this? It's actually 10th canto, first chapter, and Parikshit Maharaj is already listening to Sukadeva Goswami approximately for 4 days and 4 nights. And now he's asking these questions. Can you read them?
Kindly enlighten me by describing his transcendental characteristics. My dear Shukadev Goswami, you have already explained that Sankarshan, who belongs to the second quadruple, appeared as the son of Rohini named Balaram. If Balaram was not transferred from one body to another, how is it possible that he was first in the womb of Devaki and then in the womb of Rohini? Kindly explain this to me. Why did Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, leave the house of his father, Vasudev, and transfer himself to the house of Nanda in Vrindavan? Where did the Lord, the master of the Yadu dynasty, live with his relatives in Vrindavan? Lord Krishna lived both in Vrindavan and in Mathura. What did he do there? Why did he kill Kamsa, his mother's brother? Such killing is not at all sanctioned in the Shastras. Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, has no material body, yet he appears as a human being. For how many years did he live with the descendants of Vrishni? How many wives did he marry? And for how many years did he live in Dwarka?
These are 9 questions that Parikshit Maharaj is firing at Sukadeva Goswami. If you sit in this chair and you get 9 questions, one after another, after another, after another, it's quite overwhelming. But what do you feel here? What is the mood of Parikshit Maharaj? I want to hear, I want to hear, I want to hear, I want to hear. Complete excitement. He's just rattling his questions. Please do not stop. So therefore, this is an important slide. In the Ayurveda, it's clearly mentioned that if you are not hungry, you should not eat. Because when you are not hungry, you cannot digest food when you still eat. Similarly, if you are not hungry for the topics about Krishna, then it's very difficult to digest. So somehow or other, we have to ignite the eagerness to hear. So please repeat. Etach anyachcha sarvam me. Mune Krishna vicheshitam. Vaktum arhasi sarvagya. Sradadhanaya vishritam. So this is the verse that he composes, Parikshit Maharaj, after asking those 9 questions. And what does he say? Etat anyach jasava me mune Krishna vichestitam. Etat means this. Please give me answers on this. What this? What is this? On these 9 questions that he asked. Etach anyach. And also other questions that I didn't ask. Chasarvame, tell me everything. Sarvame, tell me everything. Mune Krishna vichestitam. Krishna vichestitam means tell me everything about all of Krishna's activities. Whatever he did, I want to hear. Vaktum arasi sarvagya. And I ask you this, arasi means you are able, vaktum, to speak on all this. Why? Sarvagya, because you know everything. So encouraging. He is encouraging the speaker by saying, I want you to answer all these 9 questions and also all the questions that he didn't ask. Tell me everything about Krishna's pastimes. I will listen, Sradadhanaya, with full faith, Vishtritam, and that's the beauty of this verse. Vishtritam means in great detail. I want to hear answers of my questions and also the questions I didn't ask. I want to hear in great detail. Can you read it?
O great sage who know everything about Krishna, please describe in detail all the activities of which I have inquired and also those of which I have not, for I have full faith and am very eager to hear of them.
Wonderful. And then the verse after that is also beautiful. I will not read the Sanskrit this time. But this word, atidushaha, means difficult to bear. Now, you remember the story why the Bhagavatam was spoken to Maharaj Parikshit. The story prior to the speaking of the Bhagavatam was that Maharaj Parikshit was out there in the forest for a hunting session, and then he got very thirsty, and he arrived in the ashram of Samika Muni, and then he made a great... He made quite a big mistake, because he was hungry, he was thirsty, he was asking the sage for some water, and the sage was in meditation, so the sage did not react. And then this king, Parikshit, he became agitated because of thirst, and therefore he became angry, and he was doubting in his mind, is this sage just ignoring me? Is it because he's a brahmana that he thinks he is better than the king? So he hung over the neck of Samika Muni a dead snake. And then when the son of the sage, Shringi, noticed that there was a dead snake around the neck of his father, then because of his mystical vision, he could understand that the king had made this offense to his father. So he cursed Parikshit Maharaj. And because he was cursed, Parikshit Maharaj, he was about to die in 7 days, so he renounced his kingdom, and he sat on the shore of the holy rivers, and he wanted to hear Srimad Bhagavatam from Sukadeva Goswami. So now he is saying, Atidushaha, something is very difficult to bear. What is very difficult to bear? Two things are very difficult to bear, is ksun and udam. You see that here in the verse. Ksum and chakta udam. Chakta means to give up, and ksum and udam is like eating and drinking. So hunger and thirst. It's very difficult to bear hunger and thirst. But here he says not atidushana, but he says na esha atidushana. It's not very difficult for me to tolerate hunger and thirst. In other words, he wants to assure Sukadeva Goswami that I ask all these questions, 4 days have passed, 4 nights have passed, I didn't drink, I didn't eat, so maybe you are a bit worried that again I become so thirsty that I commit an offense or that I'm not anymore attentive. So I assure you, na esha atidusha ksun mam chaktodam apibadate. For me, it's not very difficult to tolerate hunger and thirst. I assure you this. And why is it not difficult for me to tolerate the thirst? Pibantam. And pibantam means I am drinking. Right now, I'm drinking. Tvan mukha amboja chutam. I'm drinking something from your lotus mouth. Mukha amboja chutam. Your lotus mouth. And what is he drinking from the lotus mouth of Sukadeva Goswami? Hare Krsna. It's so beautiful. Pibantam. I'm drinking Hare Krsna from the lotus mouth of you, Sukadeva Goswami. Therefore, there is no hunger and there is no thirst. So please have faith in me that I will continue listening and hearing all the detailed answers that you are going to give. Jesse?
Because of my vow on the verge of death, I have given up even drinking water. Yet because I am drinking the nectar of topics about Krishna, which is flowing from the lotus mouth of your lordship, my hunger and thirst, which are extremely difficult to bear, cannot hinder me.
So if you want to read it, it's the first chapter of the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. If you read the whole series of these verses, it's very, very relishable. Also here, this is Prithu Maharaj. My dear Lord, I therefore do not wish to have the benediction of merging into your existence, a benediction which is there, in which there is no existence of the nectarian beverage of your lotus feet. I want the benediction of at least 1,000,000 years, for thus I may be able to hear about the glories of your lotus feet from the mouths of your pure devotees. So many, many quotes are there. Also in the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, after Arjuna realized that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then he gave this beautiful verse. O Janardhan, again, please describe in detail the mystic power of your opulences. I'm never satiated in hearing about you, for the more I hear, the more I want to taste the nectar of your words. So this is eagerness, great longing, increased taste. And where does it start, this increased taste? It starts with enthusiasm. Utsahan nistayat daryat. Rupa Goswami mentions this in the Nectar of Instruction. And what is the definition of utsahan, enthusiasm? What is Prabhupada saying in the purport? Anyone remembers? Endeavoring with, not confidence, endeavoring with intelligence. And that's interesting. The word utsahan means to endeavor with spiritual intelligence. And that is exactly why we are hearing, is to make our buddhi strong, to have a very strong spiritual intelligence. And this is the last one, I think, on eagerness. Can you read it, Jesse? Please hear attentively. This is a very important quote.
The more one hears about the Supreme God, the more one becomes fixed in devotional service. One should always hear about the Lord in the association of devotees. That will enhance one's devotional service. Discourses in the society of devotees can take place only among those who are really anxious to be in Krishna consciousness. Others cannot take part in such discourses. The Lord clearly tells Arjuna that because Arjuna is very dear to him, for his benefit such discourses are taking place.
So I underlined something that is very important. Discussions or discourses in the society of devotees can take place only among those who are really anxious to be in Krishna consciousness. Others cannot take part in such discourses. It's quite an intense statement. It's in the Bhagavad Gita, 10th chapter, the very first verse, if you want to look it up. So that means that everyone who is here, morning, evening, and probably you are very eager to be absorbed in Krishna consciousness. So the summary, how to hear. We discussed hearing live and digital lectures, self-study and reading in group, submissive hearing with service attitude for his pleasure, attentive hearing, and this is an important note. We always say that inattentive chanting is the root cause of all other offenses. So we never speak about inattentive hearing, right? Have you ever discussed that? One of the offenses is inattentive hearing, but it's the same. Do you think inattentive deity worship is an offense? Yeah? Very much, yeah? If you're in front of the deities and you're addressing the deities and you're not attentive, maybe you even, with the pin, you touch the body of Krishna and you're not attentive. Definitely these are offensive. So inattentive hearing is also an offensive way of hearing. And what will happen? Just like inattentive chanting, we remember the slide with the 3 thieves that steal away the fruits of our chanting. Adashina, Lajja, and Vikshepa. So similarly, inattentive hearing is also stealing the fruits of our hearing. Repeatedly and fully, we have discussed. And then the last one is eagerness or hunger to hear. Any questions on the summary of how to hear? Ramandroy Prabhu?
Something very interesting this afternoon. I followed another thing there. The question came up. What's the difference? It was about meditation. So, what is the difference between Buddhist meditation and meditation in Krishna consciousness? So the answer was that the Buddhists, they do everything from the mind, everything from their own mental effort, and that creates a kind of distance or alienation, you know. But in the Bhakti Yoga, the meditation is done from the heart, and that connects, you know, we actually connect with everything. That's why when we hear with attention, when we hear in, like you said, in group and association of, you know, devotees who are eager to hear, we connect very strongly, and that's why it's different from, you know, other hearing.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes? Nitya Manjari, can you take the microphone? Because devotees online are also listening.
I was just wondering, since we are not pure devotees, we do things inattentive, we chant inattentive, we may do our service not fully attentive. Isn't there also the aspect of mercy, that we, although we do things not perfectly attentive, still the result will be there and the offense will not be taken so seriously, because Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda are merciful?
Yes, that's mentioned in first canto, second chapter, text 16. Susrusho Saradhanasya Vasudeva Gata Ruchi Shan Mahat Sevaya Vipra Punya Tirtha Nishevanat. It said that when you submissively serve other Vaishnavas, then by their mercy we will develop the taste and the steadiness for hearing and chanting. So one of the aspects of successful hearing is to evoke the mercy of other devotees. And that will please Krishna, and Krishna gives us the intelligence to focus. So that's one thing. Another thing that helps me is that you prepare your mind for a hearing or a reading session. So how can you prepare your mind for reading? For example, when I am done with my job, it's 5 or 6 o'clock, and I want to refresh myself for a hearing session, I cannot straight away after my job absorb myself in hearing and chanting. So what I do, I will take a shower, I will put on new tilak, then I create an atmosphere, I light an incense, you know, you create a devotional atmosphere, you put your notebook, you put your Bhagavad Gita, some other books, and you really tell your mind that something is going to happen. And then you sit down and you really had this strong, determined intention of now I'm going to do nothing else than to study. So that means you create, you know, the body language, the way you sit, the way you put, you free your desk, maybe a little bhajan on the background, you know, some atmosphere. And you tell yourself, I will prepare myself for a hearing session. So that's very important. Also, have a fixed moment in the day to do hearing. It's also important. Just like when we are saying that if you want to practice chanting, then you have 7 P's. You know, it's like easy to remember. The first P is period of the day. A fixed period of the day that you chant, so you can also have a fixed period of the day that you hear. Then the next P is the P of place. It's very important that you find a place where you can undisturbedly hear and read. So the place is important. Then the next P is the P of posture, bodily posture. Your body language is important. If you sit on a very easy and soft couch, you know, and you're lying back and then you have your Bhagavad Gita, for sure you will fall asleep if you're tired. If you put yourself in a straight position on a table with a notebook, then it's the chances there that you will be more concentrated. So that's the third P. So like that, there are, of course, the fourth P is pronunciation, which is related to the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. But it can also help in the hearing if you loudly read. How many of you do the reading loudly? Sometimes? For some devotees it works, especially when you're sleepy, you chant the mantras, the Sanskrit mantras, you read the translation out loud. So like that. So there are different ways is to help yourself concentrating on the hearing. But it takes some effort, and just like the story that I told about my experience in Vrindavan for the 2 weeks, you think that nothing happens, but just the effort. Now I'm going to read for your pleasure, my Lord, for the pleasure of Srila Prabhupada. Then, Krishna will be very, very mercy, because he will be very pleased by your endeavor to try to hear. Anyone else? Ramananda Roy?
In that context of Mataji's question there, that isn't it Prabhupada saying somewhere that if someone doesn't have the intelligence how to practice Krishna consciousness, but he stays around with the devotees, he will get the mercy.
Yes, that's in the verse, Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam pritipurvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mam upayanti te. I think it's in that purport that Prabhupada is mentioning that even if you have no intelligence to understand anything, if you just engage in devotional service, then Krishna, he will reveal all the truths from the scriptures. And then in one lecture, Prabhupada, he tells this very, very famous story about this Brahmana who couldn't read, who just saw the picture on the Bhagavad Gita of Arjuna as Krishna as Parthasarathi. And he was crying, and then Lord Chaitanya was asking, why are you crying? And he says, it's just amazing that the Supreme Personality of Godhead becomes the servant of his devotee by, being on the chariot and receiving instructions from his devotee. So that was touching him very much. And then Lord Chaitanya says, you know all the deeper meanings of the Bhagavad Gita, even though you cannot read. So this is the Dami Buddhi Yogam Tam. Krishna, he gives us the intelligence from within. Yeah. So it's not, again, we are not opening the Srimad Bhagavatam to become knowledgeable. We open the Srimad Bhagavatam to please the Lord and to become purified and to relish Krishna's pastimes as a seva, as a service. Anyone else? Yes? There, Ms. Mataji.
Hare Krishna. I don't have a question. I just wanted to share a small story. The way you told, like you was in Vrindavan and chanting 64 rounds, at the end you got some kind of a nectar, and which maybe turned your heart and your belief. And something similar happened with me. For more than a year, I was suffering with some kind of health issues, and I wanted to get rid of this. So someone told me, or I saw on internet, to chant Radhanam. I started actually frequently. I made a schedule and I'm chanting, but it was very difficult to chant alone. And I also wanted an association with whom I can chant or I can hear or read something. It's been a year, nothing happened. I was frustrated. I was like, nothing is going to happen. It's just it's just a name. It's not a miracle. I was about to give up on it. And suddenly, like 3 months back, my friend calls me and he told me about Radhadesh. So I was chanting the Radha name and it directed me to Radhadesh, where what I was looking for I have today. The association for chanting, the people around me are devotee. I'm listening lots of new, stories and reading even the book reading, Krishna book reading. So this was the magic happened with me before I was about to give up. So I think we should hold on it, so the good time is about to come.
Wonderful story. Thank you very much. So to wind up this session, because it's 7 minutes to 7, I want to introduce the next level. Of course, we will not be able to cover everything, but the question is what to hear. So we can also say what not to hear. That's inherent in this question. So I want to listen to a little part of a lecture of Srila Prabhupada, just to end in a very auspicious note, where Prabhupada clearly talks about what to hear and what not to hear. Okay?
The sound is very important. The sound is the cause of our bondage in this material world. Just like in big, big cities, they are attached to the sound vibrated by the cinema artists. And not only that, so many other things we are hearing through the radio message, attachment for the sound. And because it is material sound, we are becoming materially entangled more and more. Some actress, some cinema artist singing, and people are so fond of hearing that singing that the artist is paid 15,000 rupees for one song. There are many here in Bombay. So just see how much attraction you have got for the material sound vibration. Similarly, the same attachment, if you turn to hear about Hare Krsna Mahamantra, then you become devoted. The same sound. One is material, one is spiritual.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So the topic for tomorrow morning is, we will not be able to cover everything, because it's always going like that. But it's what to hear, what not to hear, and then what happens when we hear. And that will be a very interesting process that is described by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in his Tika on the Srimad Bhagavatam, and he's explaining very clearly the 14 different steps from the lowest stage of devotional service to the highest stage. So that we will try to do tomorrow morning. I want to thank you very much for this opportunity to glorify the hearing process. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.